Please join me in welcoming the CEO of the NPD Group, Karen Schoenbart. Welcome, Karen. So you work in 20 different consumer product categories. You're an author. You've written a fabulous book, Mom BA, where you're talking about transmitting lessons across generations. You have so many insights and leadership lessons to share. Today, I'd like to ask you to focus specifically on something that we now all know is actually a thing, and that is called the imposter syndrome. Could you talk a little bit about your kind of personal experience with that, and kind of how you could help us see that as something we are able to overcome?
Sure, Dawn, thank you. So my story actually starts at a women's food service forum just like this, where I was in the audience, and one of the speakers was Victoria Medvick, and she said, and I'll never forget this, she said, let's imagine a company where the only criteria to be the CEO is that you have to be able to breastfeed. And then she said, I can guarantee you that there will be men going, okay, I know I can't actually breastfeed, but give me a shot. You know, my wife and I have 4 kids, I've watched, I've helped, I've held things, and let me try. And the women, conversely, would be, I don't know, they're too big, they're too small, I'm not sure. And we know, right? And we know this to be true. We hear the statistics all the time that men will apply for jobs when they only have 60% of the criteria, and women won't apply unless they have 100%. So then she went on to talk about this thing called the imposter syndrome, which is a term that was coined in 1978 by some psychologists. And it's basically where competent, qualified people feel like they're going to be discovered as frauds. And I'm like, oh my God, that's a thing? Like, I'm not the only person who feels that way? And it was like this giant weight lifted off my shoulders that this was a real thing. Because my career wasn't a classic business career. Neither of my parents went to college. I was an elementary education major, and I kind of stumbled into this job in business. Now, mind you, I worked really, really hard to get where I was, but I always worried that somebody was going to tap me on the shoulder and say, we caught you, you don't really belong. And so there was this terrible fear of this imposter syndrome. And I can't see you, but raise your hand if you've ever felt that way. And everybody, so it's sad to me that 12 years later this still exists, and women in particular still feel that way. But when I started talking to men and women and found out that I wasn't alone in this, it really helped me understand that it was okay to sometimes feel that way.
And do you think there's a correlation, even in some cases, between how competent you are and the extent to which you feel this almost? I think for those who are really exceptional at what they do, we can be a little more critical of ourselves.
Yeah, and in some ways, it helped make me work harder.
Exactly.
And I think that, because of that, I tried even harder, I worked even harder, and that might have led to some of the successes that I've had.
So in your book, you talk about ways to overcome this and to deal with it, and clearly you have found your path forward in this regard. Can you give us some tips on how to kind of navigate this when we feel this imposter syndrome coming on?
Sure, and first of all, recognize that everyone feels insecure at some time or another, so it's natural, it's normal. And I have a whole section in the book all about dealing with this, but in the interest of time, let me give you my top 3.
Great.
And the first would be, don't compare yourself to others. We do that all the time. And just like Denny said, we're each individuals, we each have something to bring. Be your best self. And then the second one, which is kind of related to that, is focus on your strengths. I guarantee if I asked each of you to name your 5 weaknesses, you could rattle them off, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But it's equally as important to focus on the things that you're good at and on your strengths. And champions are born by focusing on their strengths and being wonderful at things. So find what you are really great at and also work on honing that, in addition to obviously working on improving your weaknesses. And if you do what you love, then you'll love what you do. And then the third one, which I think is one of the most important, and everybody can start this today, start a fan file, your own fan file. Start keeping a file of your accomplishments. When your boss gives you a compliment, a client, a coworker, when you do a project that you're particularly proud of, put it in your file. And this serves two purposes. One is when you're feeling kind of insecure and kind of down, as we all do, you can look at that and it makes you feel better. And the other is when it's time for your performance review, or there's an opportunity or promotion or an opportunity to take a position in a different function, you can pull out that file and use that to really help show others what you've been able to accomplish. So those would be a couple of tips for avoiding it, and I hope that, there's so many role models today, men and women, and so many more women role models than when I was here, that I hope you can all look at those and just go for it. Believe in yourself and just go for it.
And you are one of those women role models
Thank
that
you.
we all look to. Karen, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you, Dawn.